Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into an absolutely fascinating dataset entirely derived from the UNESCO World Heritage Records for Turkey. What we're looking at here isn't just a list of places, it's literally a blueprint of human history all mapped out on a single peninsula. Let's get right into it.
Okay, so check out this number. The data reveals there are exactly 22 protected sites within this region. But seriously, do not let that relatively small number fool you. These 22 locations represent a staggering expanse of over 11,000 years of continuous human civilization. We're talking from the very moment humans first built monuments, all the way to the absolute peak of sprawling multi-continental empires.
To actually make sense of this immense timeline, we're organizing our explainer into 5 distinct eras. We'll start with the Neolithic Age, move into the Bronze and Iron Ages, explore the splendor of antiquity, detail the medieval heritage, and then conclude with the Ottoman zenith. Think of this as our very own time machine.
All right, kicking things off with Part 1, İnsanlığın Şafağı, or The Dawn of Humanity.
This part really blows my mind because it brilliantly illustrates the immense timeline of early human evolution. At Göbekli Tepe, dating way back to around 9600 BC, we find the earliest known monumental temple complex in human history. This is a site that fundamentally reshaped our entire understanding of hunter-gatherer belief systems. And then, a couple millennia later, at Çatalhöyük, humanity actually transitions to settled agriculture. Mind-bendingly, this society was organized in connected, contiguous houses with absolutely no streets. Can you imagine that?
Moving right along to Part 2, Tunç ve Demir Çağ Krallıkları, Bronze and Iron Age Kingdoms.
So watch how fast society scales up here. Our sources show that the very first state form and bureaucracy actually emerged at Arslantepe, right alongside the oldest known bronze swords. Power then concentrates even further at Hattusha, which was the heavily fortified Bronze Age Hittite capital, famous for its deeply intimidating Lion Gate. And finally, we arrive in the Iron Age, at Gordion, a place totally dominated by the colossal burial mounds, or tumuli, of Phrygian kings, yes, including the legendary King Midas.
Now this is wild. Just the number 9. What does it mean? Well, this single number represents the 9 distinct layers of continuous settlement found at the Troy archaeological site. According to the data, these layers represent over 4,000 years of unbroken history. This is the very same Troy immortalized by Homer's Iliad, literally rebuilt 9 times over 4 millennia.
Part 3. Antik Çağın İhtişamı, the splendor of the ancient age.
But hey, before we get to the grand, sweeping cities of this era, let's pose a quick question based on a brand new 2025 entry from our source material. This is about an invention that literally changed how human commerce functions forever. Where do you think the very first coin in history was minted?
And the answer is Sardis. We actually have the capital of the Lydian kingdom to thank for the very concept of carrying money in our wallets. Added just recently to the heritage list, the data also highlights the massive gymnasium complex there, a protected synagogue, the Artemis Temple, and the monumental Bin Tepe burial mounds. Just incredible stuff.
Now, looking at this data, we can see how the region was basically dominated by these 5 absolute titans of the ancient world, each thriving with its own total specialty. Xanthos Latun served as the religious heart of Lycia, known for its unique rock tombs. Then you have Hierapolis, which blended a Greco-Roman city with breathtaking thermal white travertines. Bergama showcased this unparalleled multi-layered city planning with its soaring Acropolis. Ephesus was this massive port city, home to the famous Celsus Library and the Artemis Temple. And Aphrodisias? Well, it stood out for its pure mastery of art, driven by the era's most famous sculpture school.
So here's a crucial point. East and West didn't just exist side by side during this era, they actually merged. And nothing encapsulates that synthesis quite like Nemrut Dagi. Here, the Commagene king Antiochus I built colossal statues high on a mountain peak to offer gratitude to the gods, deliberately blending Hellenistic, Eastern, and Western deities into one sky-high cult center.
All right, Part 4, Orta Çağın Kültürel Mirası, the cultural heritage of the Middle Ages. Now, I want you to contrast these 2 totally distinct marvels from this era. On one hand, Divri Ulu Cami represents the absolute pinnacle of building with stone, featuring enchanting carvings and perfect symmetry. But by contrast, Göreme National Park in Cappadocia showcases the sheer genius of carving into stone. We're talking entire monasteries and elaborate underground cities carved directly into the soft volcanic tuff layers, right alongside those natural fairy chimneys. It is completely surreal.
We also see some vital trade and survival networks here. Take the archaeological site of Ani, for example. Sitting right on the Silk Road, known as the City of 1001 Churches, it featured an incredible architectural blend of Armenian, Seljuk, and Georgian styles. And further south, sustainability is perfectly captured in the Diyarbakir Fortress, where thousands of years of ancient city walls maintain a continuous cultivated link to the Tigris River through the Hefsel Gardens.
And here's a really cool recent addition from 2023. These 5 specific mosques spread across Anatolia perfectly highlight a very specific kind of medieval mastery, wooden hypostyle architecture. Structures like Konya's Eşrefolu rely on highly complex wooden column support systems, showcasing the intricate wood carving techniques that totally define the medieval Anatolian aesthetic.
Finally, Part 5, Osmanlı İmparatorluğu'nun zirvesi, the peak of the Ottoman Empire.
We can actually trace the evolution of Ottoman urban life in 2 very clear steps here. It starts at the birth of the empire in Bursa and Kumalakazik. That's an early commercial blueprint defined by bustling khans and civic complexes. And then, that blueprint eventually matures and is perfectly preserved in Safranbolu. Safranbolu is basically a living, breathing example of classic urban timber architecture, with its historic mansions and original street layouts completely intact.
When you talk about monumental architecture from this era, you absolutely have to talk about the legendary architect Mimar Sinan. He summarized his work on the Selimiye Mosque in Edirne with just 2 words, Ustalık eserim, which means my masterpiece. And the data points out exactly why. Sinan used a single, massive dome to create an immense, unified interior space, achieving the absolute peak of Ottoman engineering.
Of course, this entire historical journey naturally culminates in Istanbul, a site so immensely rich in history that it's actually comprised of 4 distinct protected zones. You've got the Sultanahmet Archaeological Park, which includes icons like the Hippodrome, Hagia Sophia, and Topkapi Palace, the Süleymaniye Conservation Area, the Zeyrek Conservation Area, and the historic land walls. Together, these zones perfectly encapsulate Istanbul's reign as the unparalleled monumental capital of both the Byzantine and Ottoman empires.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into our source material, I want to leave you with a pretty vital question to ponder. We've just traveled through 11,000 years of human ingenuity, seeing how these 22 unique sites beautifully illuminate our history. But the real question is, while they light up our past, which of these fragile marvels will we successfully protect and carry forward for the generations of the future? Think about that for a bit. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.